Now that we are very quickly approaching the midpoint of the year, it is time to look at what book releases I'm excited about for the second half of 2026. And you know, it looks like we might have a bit of a drought in summer, but autumn is fully booked. Every time I make one of these videos, I get questions about where I find out about new releases and what's upcoming. And the main resource that I use is in the Browse tab of Goodreads. There is a section called like new releases, upcoming releases, something like that, where you can flick through the months and it will tell you in order of popularity everything that's being released, but you can also filter it by authors on your shelves. So it will specifically tell you upcoming releases by month from authors that you have read from before. I then take those books and cross-reference the release dates on the Waterstones website to make sure that the release date that Goodreads is displaying is the accurate one for the UK. And then I also go through my series spreadsheet to see if there are any sequels being released in series that I'm currently in the middle of or by authors that I really like. Now, I'm hoping that this is a pretty comprehensive list of all of my anticipated releases, but I have not imported any of my books into Goodreads this year. So if there's authors that I've read from for the first time in 2026, they're not going to come up as authors I've read from before when it comes to looking at the anticipated releases. I really need to get on that. I just fell behind and never caught up, and I literally haven't put a single book of the year in. And now obviously it's become such a daunting task that I'm procrastinating on it. As with all of my anticipated releases videos, this is not going to be a comprehensive list of everything released in the second half of the year that sounds interesting. I tend to focus on new releases from authors that I really enjoy, sequels in series that I'm in the middle of, specifically if I'm up to date on the series, because I don't tend to get super excited about book 5 in a series if I'm only 2 books in, you know, because I still got a long way to go. And also arcs that I have for the second half of the year, which actually, because there is quite a drought of releases I'm excited about in summer, I only have one arc to talk about right now. But we are going to be working through these in chronological order, starting with, of course, July. Well, the first book we're going to talk about is actually the only exception to the chronology of this video, because on the 1st of July we have Into the Fading Twilight by Catherine Cowles, but on the 17th of November, we have Beneath a Midnight Moon. These are books 2 and 3 in the Starlight Grove series. I read book 1 earlier this year and I really enjoyed it. Catherine Cowles writes a lot of romantic suspense, and this was my first foray into that genre, although I anticipated that it was something that I was going to enjoy because I like something a little bit extra alongside my romance. And this one hit the spot. It was compelling. I enjoyed the romance and the chemistry, and overall just had a really good time. So I'm eagerly anticipating Into the Fading Twilight. And then Catherine Cowles did just release the title and the cover for Beneath a Midnight Moon. So this is set in a small town. In the first book, we are following a woman who has moved to this town from somewhere like a California city, I think maybe like San Diego or San Francisco. And she's moved to this small town because her best friend went missing there almost a year ago. Nobody's really looking for her. They think that she was either killed by an animal or just like wandered off and ran away on her own. So she's moving back to this town to investigate what actually happened. And our male main character in here is the son of a serial killer. He has, I think, 4 brothers, each of which who are going to be the male main character of the rest of the books in this series, and they all feel like they have a lot to atone for because of the actions of their father, even though it had nothing to do with any of them. So the male main character of the first book is a hacker who's been working with the FBI, and he's now like finished working for them and he's returned home, and he helps the main character to look into what happened to her friend. And in their free time, these brothers look into missing persons cases where the trail has gone cold. So each of them has a specific skill set. One's a hunter, one's a hacker, obviously, and in each book we're going to kind of delve into their personal stories. So the second book in the series is going to be following Cole, who's one of the brothers I'm most interested in, and book 3 is going to be following Maverick. Both of the love interests, as well the female main characters, are characters that we have already met in book 1. I have another contemporary romance for July. This one's for the 30th, and it is Daybreak by Autumn Woods. This one is the follow-up to Nightshade, and I think the final book in this duology. So I actually recently read Nightshade and I liked it a lot. It's not a perfect book and I found quite a few flaws with it, but I had a really good good time and I got quite invested. This one is a dark academia romance but with mafia elements, following a girl who is attending this elite university to figure out what happened to her parents who died a few years before the start of the book and get revenge on the person responsible for their deaths. But what she doesn't expect when she arrives at this university is that the one person that she's going to grow the closest to is the son of the man responsible for her parents' death. On the 30th of July, we have our first fantasy release, which is A Snake Among Swans by Hannah Kana. Now, I still have to read the final book in, I think it's the Fallen Gods trilogy. The first book in that one is Godkiller, but I really like how atmospheric Hannah Kana's books are and I love her writing. So I'm really excited to see what she's going to be delivering next. This one has quite a typical fantasy setup, but I feel like it has a little bit of a twist on it because I think it's quite a like woodsy fantasy, but also potentially a little bit fairy tale-esque. We're dealing with like princes and princesses. Our main character is the lost heir of a fallen kingdom and she betroths herself to an aging warlord, and her responsibility then of course is like to produce him an heir, but I think that she marries him under ulterior motives. I don't know if he knows who she is, but I think that her intention is to sow discord in some way so that she can eventually like reclaim her kingdom. I actually only have one book for August, and this is also the only arc that I currently have for the second half of the year as well, which is To Dance with Death by Brittany Arena. So thank you so much to Bloomsbury for sending this one my way. This one is the second book in a duology and I have not read book one yet, which is A Dance of Lies, I think, but I do have it. It's one that I wasn't sure about when I received it. It was a fairy loot book because it focuses on dance and that's not necessarily something that I'm drawn to, but somebody was talking to me about it and said that it has a lot of yearning within the romance. And I also saw a negative review of it recently that says the person DNF'd the book, but they were like halfway in and said that it didn't contain any fantasy. It was more like politics and intrigue, which in their eyes was like a negative review. That's the reason why they DNF'd. Actually sounds really good to me, so I'm so much more hyped to read this duology than I was when I originally hauled book one now. This one is following a woman who I'm pretty sure is a dancer that has been imprisoned, but the king offers to release her from the dungeons if she spies for him at an upcoming like political gathering. In September is where things start to get really good because at the beginning of this year, 2026, looked like a regular year for book releases. You know, some good stuff coming out, but nothing revolutionary. In the second half of the year, specifically like September and October, so many anticipated sequels are being released and I am so ready for it. So kicking us off on the 1st of September, we have The Knave and the Moon by Rachel Gillig. This one is the follow-up to The Knight and the Moth, which was my favorite book of 2025. Now, I have been burned by so many duologies in the past. So many times I read the first book in a duology, I love it, and I find book two to be kind of rushed and underwhelming and doesn't really capture the magic of the first book because it's rushing to bring the series to a conclusion. I hope that I do not feel this way about The Knave and the Moon. I am so excited. If you guys haven't read The Knight and the Moth, Rachel Gillig in general, because I've read One Dark Window but haven't finished that duology either, but in One Dark Window and The Knight and the Moth, Rachel Gillig has such rich, lush, atmospheric writing and I eat that up. Like atmosphere writing and world building, my three favorite things. I don't mind a plot that doesn't really move if I'm like lost in the prose, and I feel like that's kind of a strength of Rachel Gillig. But The Knight and the Moth is following a diviner called Sybil, and I think she's one of 6, so she has 5 diviner sisters, and diviners in this world are taken, they're foundlings, so they're taken when they're children to the cathedral. The process of divination is really brutal. They're essentially drowned, and in the process of kind of being revived is when they have like prophetic dreams that divine the future. So this starts off with the king coming to receive the divination that is going to foretell how his reign is going to go, and this also lines up with the end of Sybil and her sister's tenure as diviners, because they only serve for 10 years and they're really optimistic about this future that they're going to have together. They're going to leave the cathedral, live out the rest of their life as they please together because they love each other, they're sisters. As we're getting closer and closer to this 10 years being up, Sybil's sisters start to disappear one by one. So she contacts the king to petition him for his help in finding her sisters, and the main person who accompanies her on her quest is the heretical knight Rory Mendacious. This is a little bit of a weird one for me, and I'm still torn about whether I'm actually going to pick this one up, but on the 8th of September we have Taipei Story by R.F. Kuang. Now, I am very hit or miss with R.F. Kuang. I enjoyed Yellowface. I loved Babel. I don't like The Poppy War at all. Literary fiction, not a genre that I read, but I hope that when R.F. Kuang is writing literary fiction, she's going to be doing it with a little bit more subtlety than she does in books like Babel, because I really enjoy her social commentary. I just don't love how heavy-handed she is in delivering it. So releasing an adult literary fiction book, I'm hoping, is going to leave a lot more to the reader's interpretation than what we currently have in books like Babel and also Yellowface, where it's constantly like over explaining the message instead of letting the reader kind of absorb and process that on their own. I actually went to an R.F. Kuang talk for Catabasis last year where she was talking about Taipei Story, and she said that the main themes of this novel are things like diaspora, and we're following a character who is Chinese American, and she goes to take place in a foreign language course that she thinks is going to draw her closer to her culture, but she finds herself kind of out of her depth, and then on top of this her grandfather dies. And while she's grieving, she's kind of grappling with her identity as a Chinese American. So she's too American to fit in amongst other Chinese people, but then she's too Chinese to like fully feel at home in American society. Also on the 8th of September, we have Tempest by Victoria Aveyard. Now, Victoria Aveyard is the author of one of my favorite series of all time, which is of course the Red Queen series, but Victoria Aveyard is also the author of Realmbreaker, which I was so excited about, and I did not like that book. I pushed through, but honestly I should have DNF'd. I did not have a good time, but I'm hoping that that was just a blip and that Tempest is 10 out of 10. This is a pirate story. Generally not my favorite, but there are instances where I've enjoyed it in the past, such as with the Live Ship Traders. So this one is following, I think it's dual perspective, and I think it's Victoria Aveyard's take on a romantasy, which is going to be interesting because I know that she said multiple times that she's not super comfortable writing romance as like the sole focus of the story. So I'm interested to see like what the balance is here. But we have a female pirate who used to be a lady and then she escaped. I think she was betrothed to this horrible lord. She escaped, she became a pirate queen. And then our male main character is also a pirate and the only man that our female main character has ever loved. And the Navy are currently trying to reclaim the seas. They've captured all of the pirate ships except the one belonging to this guy who I'm assuming is gonna have to go save the pirate queen. I mean, sounds good to me. Hopefully I enjoy this one. The last book for the 8th of September is Burn of the Everflame by Pen Cole. This one is the 4th and final book in the Kindred's Curse saga. I have currently not started the Kindred's Curse saga, but this is the current series that we're working through for my Patreon book club. So by the time that this has been released, I should be reading the 3rd book, I think. So almost ready for the 4th. And this is a romantasy series that I've pretty much only heard amazing things about. The first book, Spark of the Everflame, follows a young woman called DM whose mother goes missing. This is set in a world where the offspring of the gods, I think they're called something like the Descendants, rule over the world, and she lives in this really like small village, and her mother goes missing and she finds out some secrets about her mother that she had no idea about, which thrusts her into the world of the offspring of the gods, where the king's son starts to pay a lot of attention to her. For the 15th of September, September, we have one of my pre-orders, which is Deadbeat by Leigh Bardugo. At the end of 2025, I read Ninth House, which was the first book in this series, and it was not what I expected it to be, but I still really enjoyed it. I need to read book 2, but obviously now is the perfect time for me to get into that with book 3 on the horizon. But this one is following a young woman called Alex Stern who can see the dead, and because of that, she is recruited by Yale to join the Ninth House, which is the Ninth Secret Society. And the job of the Ninth House is to police the occult activities of the other 8 secret societies. This has a little bit of a murder mystery in it, but also Alex has not been at Yale for very long, and she is now without her mentor, who has also disappeared under mysterious circumstances, and the events that are kind of unfolding in present day are reminding her a lot of her past. The reason why this was different than I expected it to be is that it's kind of executed like old school paranormal detective series, things like the Dresden Files, but with a little bit more of a modern take, which I actually found that I really enjoyed. So different from what I typically read, but I liked it enough to continue on. On the 22nd of September, we have The Sweetest Fiend by Raven Kennedy. I actually have the Goldsboro edition of this pre-ordered, and if you guys would like to take advantage of my 10% off Goldsboro discount, I'm currently an ambassador for them, and you can use my code BeccaBumxx10 on any in-stock books on their website. That code is going to expire at the end of June, so if you want to take advantage of that, then use it quick. But I have the Goldsboro, there's like 4 or 5 different editions of this, and I just went with the Goldsboro one. But this one I'm intrigued about because I am a big fan of the Plated Prisoner series, and this one still centers around Fae. But the thing that I'm a little unsure about is that this is apparently like loosely inspired by the Pied Piper, which is not a tale that I have a lot of interest in, and I'm interested to see how we're going to convert that to a romantasy story. Only time will tell, I guess, and I literally don't know anything else about it aside from that it's Fae and the Pied Piper, but I like Raven Kennedy, so I want to give it a try. Also for the 22nd, we have another book that you guys may be surprised about, which is Hollywood Ending by John Green. I was a huge John Green fan when I was like in my late teen years, and then I read Turtles All the Way Down when that was released, and I've also enjoyed the Anthropocene Reviewed. I still need to read Everything is Tuberculous, I can't say that. Everything is TB. It's still on my TBR. But this one is a new fiction book from John Green, following 2 young actors who have been cast in their breakout roles. They're filming an Andy Warhol biopic, and the movie blows up kind of unexpectedly, and they're kind of thrust into the spotlight. They're also kind of falling in love with each other, and it's about navigating like public and private lives and all of the like turmoil that comes along with it. I expect it to be deeply introspective because that's what I expect from John Green, and it's been what, like 8 years since his last fiction book. I'm really stoked for this one. Moving into October, we actually have a book that I can't find on Waterstones or Amazon to pre-order. I don't know whether it's just having like an indie release to start off with, even though books 1 and 2 I know have been picked up and like distributed by a traditional publisher. But on the 1st of October, we have Vasmora by Kerry Lake, which is the final book in the Eating Woods trilogy. Now, I'm not currently up to date on this, but I just read book 1, which is Anathema, so this feels like a good time to actually prioritize this series, with the 3rd book being released soon, because then I don't have to wait like years for extra installments and I can get through it this year. But Anathema is a dark gothic romance. Kerry Lake has a full list of triggers on her website. Would definitely recommend checking those out if you feel like you may need them, because I do feel like this does actually deliver on that promise of being dark. But it is set in a world that is split between the mortal realms and the magical realm. So we have our female main character in the mortal realms. It has like witch trial vibes, where her entire life she's like accused of witchcraft because she was found next to the woods as a baby, and these woods are where the townspeople banish people. So they send them into the woods where they're eaten by a creature that lives there. But then we also have a portal to the magic realms, and that's where our male main character is from, who is a cursed mage. And there's this like blight that people think is going to like devour the magical realms, and so our male character is Evan Commander is on a mission to claim the bloodstones of 7 magical bloodlines, or 7 bloodlines from different species. They think that if he has all of these, then he'll be able to do something that kind of stops the blight for good, and also cures not only his own curse, but the curse on his brother, which is manifesting very differently and much worse for him. That was not a good synopsis, I'll be honest, but this is a very long book that takes like 200 pages to kind of get to the point, and the point is not what I actually just told you, but that's the best I can do right now. On the 6th of October, we have Victorious by V. Schwab. This is a book that I feel I have been waiting my entire life for. It is the 3rd book in the Villainous series, potentially the last book, although every book in this series has potentially been the last book, so who knows. But the first book, Vicious, is following Victor and Eli, who were best friends in university. They're science bros, and they wanted to find out how to become extraordinary, so people with superpowers. They then discover that the way to do this is to have a near-death experience, so they proceed to kill themselves and each other and revive each other to gain these superpowered abilities. And that is like ancient history at this point, because Victor and Eli, they are not students anymore. And Victor is being released from prison, and he has a score to settle with Eli, who is no longer his best friend, but actually his mortal enemy. Also on the 6th of October, we have another one that I couldn't find on Waterstones, but I believe Coiled at the Roots by Scarlett St. Clair is going to be coming this year. This one is the sequel to Terror at the Gates, which was one of my favorite romantasy books that I read last year. It is an urban fantasy that is very much inspired by modern day monotheistic religion. So the setting of this book is a city, and our main character is from the nicest place of the city where all of the elite live, which is of course called Eden. And she has essentially rebelled against her family, and she's currently hanging out in Nineveh, which is like the sin district of the city. And she steals to get by a little bit. Her father knows where she is. They're kind of indulging her whims, but she's trying to prove that she can make it on her own, and sometimes she steals for a little bit of income, and she ends up with this dagger that when she tries to pass it on to the guy that she normally sells her stuff to, she finds out that anybody who touches this dagger apart from her dies. And so she has to team up with the leader of Nineveh, who is Zahariev, to try and get to the bottom of where this mysterious artifact is from. The ending of book 1 was wild, and I really don't know where we're going to go from there. For the 15th of October, we have Stolen Crown, which is the 4th book in the Eversea series by L.J. Andrews. I read book 1 last year and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I also read another L.J. Andrews book that I really enjoyed, and so I'm excited to continue on with this series. Obviously, I still have 2 books before I need to read book 4, but this one is one of those romantasy series where it's split into sections following different couples. So books 1 and 2 follow the same couple, and then book 3 I think is a standalone for a different character, and I'm not sure what book 4 is doing. But in book 1 in this series, we are following the Everking, who is desperate to retrieve a kernel of his father's power because his lands are suffering from a blight and he does not know how to fix it. He thinks if he gains access to this power, then he will be able to cure the blight and free his people from having to like evacuate all of their lands. Our female main character is the daughter of the king of, I think they're the Earth Fae, and they took the kernel of the Everking's power, and he knows about this, but there's a barrier in the sea that is stopping him from being able to cross into these lands. And our main female character accidentally unlocks that, so he comes to shore and he kidnaps her, thinking that her father will offer him the kernel of his father's power in exchange for her life. But as they adventure the seas together, they figure out that the key to fixing this blight may not be as simple as the Everking originally thought. On the 22nd of October, we have another new release by one of my favorite authors, this time Becky Chambers, who has a full-length novel coming out called As You Wake, Break the Shell. This one is of course a sci-fi set on a resource poor planet. We are following 2 characters. One is a botanist botanist and one is a pilot. The pilot works on specific kinds of ships that are called living ships, and I think that she has some sort of mind link to them, and she develops some sort of side effect of piloting called mind bleed, and she goes to the botanist for help. I believe that this is told in 2 timelines, when they first met and also where they are right now. Because it is Becky Chambers, I'm expecting it to be both incredibly thoughtful and thought-provoking, dealing with a lot of societal issues and exploring them within the context of like this alien planet. Also for the 22nd, we have Chateau Reverie by Natasha Siegel, which I'm interested in because earlier this year I read As Many Souls as Stars and really enjoyed that. It is a historical fantasy, and once again I really like Natasha Siegel's writing style. This is once again a quite short book. I wish her books were a little bit longer, because my one criticism of As Many Souls as Stars is that I felt like it was a little bit too short, but I'm interested to see how this one plays out. It's set during the French Revolution. It's set in a place called Chateau Reverie, which is kind of where you go. It's like an auction, and I think you go to have your desires granted. So you receive an invitation and one of our main characters goes, and her wish is that she forgets the one woman that she's loved. We also have a second main character in here who doesn't remember ever not being at this chateau, so we obviously have a little bit of a backstory there of like how he arrived, and I'm expecting it to have like a flowery writing style, mainly be character focused, and a really great atmosphere. And then of course for the 27th of October we have ACOTAR 6. Can you believe we are this close to release of this book and we do not have a title or a cover? My leading theory right now is that that's because whatever it is, like the title of it is going to give something away about the direction of the book, so they're leaving it as late as possible. But come on guys, it's time, like reveal something. We're so close to release at this point. It's what, like 4 months away? In case you missed it as well, I am currently recapping all of the books in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series leading up to the release of book 6. I just posted the first one. I'm going to be recapping 1 book per month from now until October. If you guys need to recap but you don't have time to reread yourself, don't worry, I got you. But if you guys don't know what ACOTAR is at this point, it is a fae romance, a romantasy series following a young woman called Feyre who kills a fae wolf shifter during a harsh winter where she's trying to feed her family. And this big beast bursts into her house and calls her a murderer and tells her that he has come to claim her life in exchange for the one that she's taken. But instead of killing her, he is going to take her to the fairylands of Prythian, where she is to live out the rest of her mortal days. The plot is vastly different now than it was then, but that is the setup of book 1. For November, we have The Wolves of War by John Gwynne, which I'm about to start my final unread John Gwynne book, which is The Fury of the Gods. So I'm so excited that I'm going to have something new to dive into really soon. I'm just not so excited that after I've read that book, I'm gonna have to wait until the second book in this duology is published. I'll be honest, I do not know very much about this one, given what I know about John Gwynne from all of his books that I've read before though. Even if I did know a brief synopsis of The Wolves of Winter, it potentially wouldn't really cover the core of what the series is about. But John Gwynne is a massive history nerd. All of his books are inspired by a certain like historical time period or the myth and the lore of a certain country or time period. And The Wolves of Winter in particular is focused on Slavic folklore, and I believe the time period is roughly the 10th century. For the 10th of November, we have the trad pub release date for Of Darkness and Light by Ryan Carhill. This one is the second book in the Bound and the Broken series. All of this series today is available on Kindle Unlimited, and I think that the final novella is about to be published in that series. I think there's 4 books out so far, and 4 novellas, and then there's just one final book to be published in this series, all available on KU, but the Broken Binding have also picked this series up and are traditionally publishing it as well. So this is the traditional publishing release date for book 2 in the series, which is where I'm currently up to actually, which is great. This is a series that is very in line with a bunch of classic fantasy series. It has elements of like Wheel of Time and Lord of the Rings in here, but in execution and the way book 1 kind of unfolded, it reminded me a lot of like The Faithful and the Fallen by John Gwynne. But it is essentially set in this world that is currently under the control of the Empire, but 400 years before that it was in the control of the Order, and the Order were betrayed, the Empire took over, and a lot of the races of the world have gone into hiding since then. So we used to have like dwarves, giants and elves just roaming around freely, and all of those communities have kind of like pulled back and gone into seclusion. Now our main character of this series is a young man. He's just performed the ritual, the trial in this world that you have to go through to become a man from a boy. So he's just like entered into manhood, and he ends up wrapped up in the Order's resistance, who are trying to fight back against the Empire. This series does also contain dragons, which is a core part of the first book, and I'm really excited to see where book 2 takes this one, because I have heard that it is one of those series where book 2 is so much better than the first book, and I'm really excited to see how it builds upon book 1, because the first book I enjoyed but I didn't love. The novella that I read, 5 stars. So I'm really excited for book 2. Surprisingly, for the 17th of November, we have Stormside by Alex Aster. This one is the sequel to Starside, which once again is a book that I've just read, which seems really weird. There's a lot of that in this video, but that one was only released at the end of March. So I'm so surprised that we're getting the second book in this duology this year as well. I did check this on a couple of different websites and it does seem to be accurate, but Starside is set in a world that is split between 2 realms. You have the non-magical side of the realm, which is Stormside, and you have the magical side, which is Starside. And every 25 years, 50 mortals can pass through the gates from Stormside to Starside, travel across this vast land and collect a cup of magic and bring it back to the mortal realms to benefit themselves, their communities, their families, whatever they want to do with it. And our main character is determined to complete this quest, but not because she wants the cup of magic, but actually because she wants to take revenge on the god who is responsible for the death of her family. And then because we've already covered Beneath a Midnight Moon, we just have one final book for this video, which is the only anticipated release I think I have for December. This book is released on the 3rd of December. It is technically the start of a new series, but also technically a new installment in one of my favorite series of all time. We have so much of that energy this year and I'm so ready for it. But this one is Rising Thunder by Neil Shusterman, which is a prequel to the Arc of a Scythe series. And I thought that this was just going to be a one-off prequel, but Goodreads has it listed as book 1 in the First Blades. Sign me up. So the Arc of a Scythe series is actually a utopian series that is set at a time, some point in our future, where we have conquered death. You can't die of old age, there's no illness, you can't die of an accident, you just get patched up, but there is still a population issue, and that is where these scythes come in. So the only way that you can die in this world is if you are gleaned by a scythe, and each scythe has their own specific code. So in the Arc of a Scythe series, we are following 2 apprentice scythes who end up on each side of a divide within the scythedom. You have the Old Guard, who are scythes that believe in the honor of their job and that you should not take your power lightly and that you shouldn't abuse the power that you have been given as a scythe. And then you have the New Order of the scythedom, who think all of that stuff is really boring and just want to go on killing sprees. So this new book is set at the moment when the world changed, like when we conquered death and the scythedom was introduced. The whole world is ruled by an AI called the Thunderhead in this series as well, like the whole Arc of a Scythe series, which now that we have AI as such a presence in the real world could be a really interesting read. But this new book is set at the inception of the Thunderhead, and the Thunderhead is one of the most interesting elements of this world for me. So I'm really excited to dive into it. So those are all of the books that I'm currently anticipating for the second half of the year. There is a chance that I've missed a couple off, and there may also be like a bunch of debuts or books from authors that I've never read before that are also released in the second half of the year that do seem really interesting to me. But I mean, this is kind of my priority list, and there's already, I think, 22 books on it. So I have plenty to be going at, but y'all know me, I will be getting little bits and bats trickling into my collection over this 6 months as well. But down in my comments, let me know which book you are most excited about for the second half of 2026. Maybe you can inspire me, add some books to my TBR, or do the same for anybody else who is down there browsing the comments. And if you guys would like to let me know that you were here, but you don't feel like you have anything to say, I'm pretty sure there's a little storm cloud emoji. Yes, there is. Leave me the little lightning cloud emoji for Thunderhead. But aside from that, guys, please don't forget to like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna. If you head into my description box, you'll find a link to my Goodreads, my Instagram, my Patreon, and my TikTok if you want to follow me on any of those. But that's it from me today, guys. Bye.
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you'll go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.